Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this Democratic Candidates Night here at Arlington Town Hall. I'm Charlotte Golar-Ritchie, and it is an honor to serve as your moderator this evening. If you're wondering how it is that a Dorchester Democrat is moderating a panel here in Arlington, we Democrats know that the issues that affect us do not conveniently end at the town line or the city line. And as I served in the state legislature way back last century in the 1990s, I spent a few years working alongside legislators from the 4th Middlesex Senate District, which was newly created at the time, and I collaborated with members of your legislative delegation on a host of issues that supported the people of both Middlesex and Suffolk counties. And furthermore, as someone who has participated in more than one candidate's debate as a candidate, and on other occasions as a moderator, and often as an audience member, I ascribe to the notion expressed by at least one writer that an educated voter is our democracy's best citizen. Along those lines, I am delighted to be here with you all this evening. You've got an ally from Boston with me, and as your moderator, I'm going to do everything I can to keep us on track. Now, this is an exciting and important night for the 4th Middlesex Senate District, and we have a full house. Our candidates forum is being hosted jointly by the Arlington and Lexington Democratic Town Committees, and through their efforts, these local Democratic organizations are providing attendees and our viewing audience with the opportunity to hear from the 3 Democratic candidates for this Senate seat, a district that is home to 170,000 residents and includes the towns of Arlington, Woburn, Burlington, Billerica, and parts of Lexington. Of course, the fact that there's a special election at all, that there's an open seat that you have candidates vying for, brings to mind the passing of Senator Ken Donnelly. He was a popular, progressive, and proud Democrat who was loved by his constituents and will be greatly missed by many in this community, and we dedicate this forum to his memory and to his service. Tonight's debate is broadcast live by Arlington Community Media, we call them ACMI, and Lex Media in Lexington. To help provide context for tonight's debate and to help us better understand the 4th Middlesex Senate District, a short video presentation has been prepared by ACMI, which we'll take a look at right now.
The 4th Middlesex State Senate District, as we know it, is only 23 years old. Changing demographics and population growth led to redistricting in 1994. The towns of the district vary in size, population, and economic base. With its proximity to Cambridge, easy access to public transportation, and a large supply of multifamily homes, Arlington is by far the most densely populated of the district towns. There are approximately 8,500 residents per square mile. The town's growing popularity is putting stress on the school system. The town is currently in the feasibility phase of rebuilding its high school. Arlington has no large industry or corporate tax base. Next door in Lexington, the iconic Battle Green, historic homes, and a quaint downtown district give the feeling of a small New England town. Lexington also embraces the future with a growing high-tech district along Hartwell Ave. Woburn's industrial past has given way to a healthy retail and corporate base. The town hugs the intersections of Routes 95 and 93, making it an accessible destination for shoppers and workers. The Cummings Corporation is one of the largest employers and most recognized brands. On the other side of the bustling town center, the Horn Pond Recreation Area is a regional attraction, offering water sports, walking trails, and fishing. Just west of Woburn, the town of Burlington has seen enormous growth over the last few decades. The renovation of Burlington Mall and the growth of high-tech firms along Route 128 has led to rapid development in the area. Fast-paced growth continues. A large multi-use development is currently under construction near Burlington Town Center. The Center Green, large parks, and recreational areas maintain the feeling of small-town New England. The northernmost member of the district, Billerica, is the least densely populated. Intersected by Route 3, high-tech firms have been moving in along the highway, and on the other side of town, Route 3A offers a town center and retail outlets, both of which support the town's tax base. The 4th Middlesex Senate District includes almost 170,000 residents. Most of the state's major highways run through it, including Routes 2, 3, 95, and 93. As a whole, it represents the 5th highest median income in the state, reaching $90,000. The concerns of each town are unique, but are connected through the legislative leadership of the state senator from the 4th Middlesex District on Beacon Hill.
Thank you. Tonight's broadcast, I mentioned earlier, but for those who just came in, tonight's debate is broadcast live by ACMI and Lex Media. And you will be able to see this program tonight on Comcast Channel 8 and RCN Channel 15 and Verizon Channel 26. This forum will air lexmedia.org, acmi.tv on demand. So you'll be able to see it repeated after we leave here tonight. Again, I'm Charlotte Golar-Ritchie, and I am your moderator. So welcome back. Democratic Candidates Night at historic Arlington Town Hall. Let's welcome our 3 Democratic Senate candidates for the 4th Middlesex Senate District and invite them to join me on stage. First, Mary Ann Stewart, Sean Garb Lee, State Rep, Cindy Friedman. Welcome. Yeah. Welcome, candidates, and I know we're excited, everyone here is excited to have you here participating in this wonderful process of getting to know you, finding out where you stand on the issues, and ultimately promoting our democratic process here. I want to briefly go through the ground rules with you all so we're all on the same page. I reminded you early on, those who are coming in, to please turn off your cell phones so the candidates will not be interrupted. I'm going to start by introducing the candidates, tell you a little bit about their backgrounds, although I'm sure many of you know them already. They're going to also have an opportunity to give open introductory remarks, up to 5 minutes. And then the order, you should know the order of presentations, they were determined prior to the start of this debate by just a simple process of picking numbers out of a cup. And they witnessed this, so they know that it's, there was no bias there. We're going to start with the first candidate, then the second, then the end will be with the third. And I'm going to present the first, what is an introductory question to kind of get you warmed up. And each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. We have timekeepers with us, so we really thank the organizers for being on point with that. When a candidate has 20 seconds left to speak, the timekeeper will hold up a yellow card. Everybody will be able to witness that. When the candidate's done, timekeeper will hold a red card. And if they keep talking, I don't know, maybe we'll get a hook or something. But we'll just kindly remind you to please wrap it up. The rest of the questions are going to come from the audience. Because this debate is televised, to expedite the process, we really thought it best to have everybody write down their questions on index cards, pass them to me, and I will read them out for everybody to hear. Those wishing to submit a question should do so on the index cards that are made available to you. They were made available when you came in. If you need an index card, something has occurred to you, forgot to pick up an index card, just wave your hand and a volunteer will bring it to you. When writing your question, it will really help me a lot if you do 2 things. And one is to really print your question clearly so I can read it. As you see, I'm aided by reading glasses. So if you can just print, large print would be helpful. And if on the back of the index card, you could just give me a slug, just a simple word that describes what the issue is. So if you're writing about housing, just put housing. If it's transportation, whatever. And that also will help us, help the index card sorters pull all the information together so we don't have a lot of redundancy in terms of the kinds of questions that are asked. A volunteer team, I just want volunteers to raise their hands so we can see you. This team is a dynamic team from Arlington and Lexington. Let's thank them for all that they're doing here. Thank you. And we have folks who are seated right here in the hallway to my right, and they are going to go through these cards with the greatest of speed to be able to pull out these questions so that we can ask those. One thing I say that we're not going to entertain questions directed to one candidate tonight, okay? We don't have time for that, so they're going to be directed to all three candidates. And then once we're done with the Q&A segment of the forum, each candidate will be given up to 2 minutes to give a closing statement, and that order too has been determined by a random selection process. So let's get this program started. I am now very pleased to share the biographies of our candidates, and they're in a condensed form. They all have websites, no doubt, that you can go to and find out about these dynamic candidates. But I'll share a little bit about who they are, starting in alphabetical order with Cindy Friedman. Cindy, for the last 9 years, has worked alongside the late Senator Ken Donnelly as his chief of staff. And in that role, she has addressed the needs of the people of the 4th Middlesex District. Together, she and Senator Donnelly worked to improve access to affordable health care, increase funding for district schools and local governments, ensured workers received a living wage, and more. Prior to working with Senator Donnelly, Cindy served as a teacher and executive in the high-tech industry. In these roles, she honed her skills as a problem solver. She and her husband, John Page, raised 3 children in Arlington, where Cindy has been an active member of the community for more than 30 years. She was a founding member of Schools Are a Priority in Our Town, co-founder of the Arlington Schools Foundation, which later became the Arlington Education Foundation, and chair of the Arlington No Place for Hate Committee. And she is a resident of Arlington Center. Next is State Representative Sean Garb Lee. He represents the 23rd Middlesex District, which comprises Arlington and West Medford, and he's held this position since 2008. He is a native resident of Arlington, attended Arlington Public Schools. He was elected to Arlington Town Meeting while still attending high school. In 2005, so he's a young Democrat involved for a long time. In 2005, he was elected to the Arlington School Committee while still earning his degree at UMass Lowell. 2008, he was one of the youngest lawmakers to ever serve on Beacon Hill when he was elected to the Massachusetts House of Representatives. As state rep, Sean is an advocate for children with disabilities and for people in vulnerable places in their lives. He has sponsored a number of bills to cover the cost of hearing aids for children, to improve the living conditions of children in foster care, to increase access to mental health services for children and adolescents, and to ensure continued health care coverage for children. He has also authored and sponsored bills to increase scholarships, helping low-income families pay for college tuition, supported equal pay for women, and protections for pregnant and breastfeeding women, working mothers, and legislation also he has supported to expand health insurance coverage to those who need it. That's Representative Garb Lee. Our third candidate is Mary Ann Stewart, and she has a 20-year track record of speaking up for children, youth, and working families. An education activist, she has worked on the local, state, and national levels, championing quality and equitable educational opportunities for all. Mary Ann, and I am calling them not out of disrespect, but by their first name just to expedite this, which I hope they don't mind. Mary Ann is the governor-appointed parent representative on the Massachusetts Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, where, as one of 10 original petition signers for the Fair Share Amendment, she pushed for adequate funding to public schools and transportation, fought to protect core public schools from charter schools that local communities opposed. As past president of the Massachusetts PTA, the oldest and largest volunteer advocacy group for children and youth, Mary Ann advocated for a hold on the state's testing program to analyze effects on learning, lobbied in Washington, D.C. for increased federal funding for students with special needs. During her tenure as former twice-elected member and chair of the Lexington School Committee, Mary Ann oversaw a budget of over $100 million, led the Lexington Public Schools as they coped with and recovered from the worst financial crisis many of us have seen, and fought for child-centered, community-conscious budgets. Mary Ann is a graduate of the state's public higher education system. Having received a degree from UMass Lowell in music education, she performed in elite choruses in Boston and around the country as a studio vocalist and recitalist for 25 years. As founder and principal artist of Red Onion Design Murals, decorative painting, she was a small business owner. Let's say hello to Mary Ann Stewart. Thank you. So now you have had a chance to meet our candidates, and now we want to hear from them, and they'll have an opportunity to give opening statements, and we're going to start in this order first with Sean Garb Lee. Mary Ann is next, then Cindy's next, and
I'm last.
we have timekeepers who will help us with that, and let's hear from you, starting with our rep.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. Charlotte, thank you so much for moderating tonight's debate. Also, thank you to the Arlington and Lexington Democratic Town Committees for organizing this event, and thank you to Mary Ann and Cindy for running and for serving in different capacities and being outstanding opponents. Ken Donnelly was one of my closest friends at the State House, and his shoes are huge to fill. He was my partner over the last 9 years, and I want to continue his legacy, but I want to build on it as well. It's been the honor of my life to serve the people of Arlington in the House of Representatives for the past 9 years. Together, working with you, I've been proud to write, file, and pass legislation that has made a positive, profound impact on our community and on our Commonwealth. Whether it was my 50-50 legislation, which I filed, which was passed and signed into law, which was the biggest investment in public higher education across the state in the last 3 decades, or standing up to insurance companies to mandate that they cover the cost of hearing aids for children, or when I filed the social worker safety law and passed it, which was the first ever in the country, regulations on the books in our executive agencies to protect social workers, or my legislation I filed and passed that created online voter registration. Maybe some of you registered to vote online in the last election. Or my work on passing the Global Warming Solutions Act, which is so important, especially with what happened in Washington, D.C. a few days ago. Or my work as the chair of the MBTA caucus, where I successfully prevented cuts to services throughout the 4th Middlesex District and here in Arlington and Lexington, successfully lowered the cost of the ride, and worked and successfully on the path for the extension of the Green Line here to Medford and trying to get the North-South Rail Link accomplished. Or my work on increasing the minimum wage to a living wage to $15 an hour. Or my work for pay equity and fighting for transgender equal rights. Or my work on passing the Foundation Budget Review Commission and voting in favor of the Fair Share Amendment. I'm proud of these accomplishments that we have achieved together. And I want to run for the state Senate to be your voice, to be able to have a larger platform and get even more legislation passed and to make a more profound positive impact than I already have on the Commonwealth. I have built alliances, I have built coalitions in the House and the Senate. There are tremendous candidates in this race, but nobody has the legislative experience that I have when it comes to collaborating, building alliances in the House and the Senate, and passing legislation. Also standing up as an independent voice in the legislature. I can't tell you how many times I voted against House leadership, and I did it because I knew it was the right thing to do. You know, they say the Senate is a more progressive body and the House is more conservative. I have stood up for families in the Commonwealth in the House, and I know that is the kind of state senator I will be. I hope to earn your vote. I thank you for being here, and I hope to earn it. Thank you.
I'm next.
Opening statements, Mary Ann second, Cindy third.
I think that's the other way around.
Okay, then if you're comfortable going the other way, then.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, the Arlington Democratic Town Committee. Thank you, Lexington Democratic Town Committee. Thank you, Sean and Mary Ann. And most of all, thank you all for coming out and caring enough to hear from each of us. When I've been in this room, and I've been here a lot, I'm usually not on stage. I'm usually sitting where you are as a parent, a town meeting member, or a volunteer. I've also stood in the back of the room making notes as Senator Ken Donnelly's chief of staff when Ken was the one up here speaking, and I liked that a lot better, by the way. My 9 years of working with Ken, as well as what's happening at the federal level, are why I'm up here now and why I'm running to be your state senator. Ken and I shared a core set of values, and the issues we championed together in the Senate reflected those values. I also know that if we want to protect those values moving forward and the gains we have made in terms of our environment, healthcare, education, and equality for all, we need now more than ever to step up and be active. We all need to get out of our comfort zones and join the fight to protect all our residents, regardless of how much money they make, where they live, the color of their skin, their religion, sexual orientation, or whether they are a Republican or a Democrat. We all have much to lose. I believe that everyone should be able to get a job, and working people should be able to put a roof over their heads, get an education, see a doctor, feel safe, and have economic security. The world is very unbalanced right now, and we need to fight big money and corporations when they tip the scales in their favor, and they are tipping. I believe, like Ken, that all people, but especially the most vulnerable, should have their voices heard by people in power. And that's why I'm running. I am way out of my comfort zone because we all need to be active and engaged, and I believe in the power of a senator to make a difference. And as a 40-year community activist, as someone who has experience as a public school teacher, a manager of software and hardware engineering groups, and a chief of staff, I can be an effective and forceful advocate for our district and for the Commonwealth. I learned a lot about the Senate and its players during the last 9 years. It's hard to bring everyone together to solve a large problem. It's very hard, but it's not impossible. You need a senator who is passionate and who can bring to the table people from inside and outside Beacon Hill, advocates and opposition alike, who can listen, who won't let the perfect get in the way of the good. I can be that senator. I fight for what I believe in. Over these years, I've built strong alliances with senators and staff, constituents and advocates. I have sat down and worked with the opposition, and we've gotten things done. One of the causes that I championed with Ken's support was an initiative that brought together the issues of substance abuse, mental health, and criminal justice reform. I reached out to police chiefs, sheriff's offices, trial courts to learn about the problems they faced. Had long talks with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, connected with local organizations like Arlington's Youth Counseling Center to understand their challenges. And working together, we are making a real difference in how we treat and provide services for people in need. We are stronger when we are many and when we are a team. Effective governance is a partnership. We face problems that are bigger than one person, and one person cannot solve them alone. I can't solve all your problems. However, a senator can listen to constituents, work with them, and open doors for them. We can bring many people to the table, and this is how we create change. My work has always been about problem solving, be it as an elementary public school teacher finding the best way to serve 31 second graders, as a manager building computers, as a chief of staff drafting and advocating for legislation, or as a co-founder of the Arlington Schools Foundation looking to save 9 reading specialists during a time of severe budget cuts in our school. And I am passionate about the problems I've worked on over the past 9 years. Some problems are small, such as helping a grandmother navigate mass health to get a doctor for her grandchild, or as large as the opiate epidemic and the criminalization of mental illness. As specific as finding housing for a family in the district who was homeless, to writing and passing legislation to provide workforce training for underemployed and unemployed young adults. Every one of those problems, regardless of the size, are important. I have helped solve those problems. This is work that greatly matters, and I want to continue to do it as the Senator for the 4th Middlesex. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here tonight, and thank you for your engagement in this special election. Thank you to Sean and Cindy for being part of this experience, and thank you also to the Arlington and Lexington Democratic Town Committees for putting together this important forum. I am Mary Ann Stewart, and I am from Lexington. And as we look out on the national political landscape that we're in, we understand that this is the backdrop to every conversation that's being had from one end of the district to the other. And we're all asking, are we prepared? What motivates me to run is that I've been working at local, state, and national levels on so many of the issues before the Senate for more than 20 years, with the Lexington School Committee, with Progressive Democrats of Massachusetts, with the Massachusetts PTA. I'm running on my own personal record of leadership and results in the community and across the state on the critical issues we face in the district and across the Commonwealth: the economy and tax reform, climate change and workers' rights, public education and public transportation. I will bring my activist spirit along with a lifetime of experience to be the most effective in driving policy in the Senate. My vision in the age of Trump is for modern policies across the board that are aligned with the way our economy runs today. The state has always been important. Our Constitution gives states power, and people recognize that. Many people are becoming engaged, and we need to empower people at the state and local level now. I understand what leadership is. It's more than how you vote. It's who you bring into the conversation. It's who is engaged in the process. It's how you build consensus and how you leverage your networks. And I have more than 20 years of that kind of leadership, both in the community and across the state. I'm bringing a fresh perspective that we desperately need in the State House. I've been working across the state, sharing hopes and dreams of my neighbors. I've had a career as a working artist for 35 years. I know what it's like to rely on affordable housing programs. I know what it's like to go without health care with 3 young children. I know the challenges of navigating for children in schools who need special attention. I know the heartbreaking loss of a loved one to opiate addiction. Not only is this perspective badly needed and so important, but it means that I have a different way of thinking, a different way of listening, and a different way of approaching problems, our most challenging and entrenched problems. I've been working across the state, and I'm the only candidate here in this race with statewide networks. I can leverage those networks to bear on the issues in the Senate. I'm the eldest of 7. I lived in a bunch of different towns when I was a kid. I lived in rural Pennsylvania and urban Columbus, Ohio, and we moved to Massachusetts when I was going to attend high school in 9th grade, and I graduated from high school in Medway. Arts education was my lifeline. I graduated from UMass Lowell with a degree in music education at a time when arts programs were being slashed across the state. I chose performance and performed in elite choruses in Boston and around the country, and as a studio vocalist and recitalist. I've lived in Lexington since 1994 with my husband Duncan, who grew up there, and our kids went through the public schools. I worked at a small church in Newton as Director of Education and Programs for Children, Youth, and Families for 10 years, encouraging children and youth to grow an identity apart from achievement. I'm currently an adjunct instructor at Middlesex Community College, where I teach adults marketable skills in social media. Like many of you, I got involved in schools when our children entered preschool and kindergarten, and I've been going out of my comfort zone ever since. I've been seeking ever wider representation and voice for my values of fairness and opportunity for all, first as an elected school site council member, then as an elected town meeting member and representative from my neighborhood. I first came on to the Lexington School Committee just as the recession was beginning to have an impact in our community. And as chairwoman, I oversaw the budget, and we had to be really careful to focus on the most important things. And I did that by focusing on child-centered schools and community-conscious budget. Sorry, see that the sign has gone up, so I'm just going to say that I'm excited to be here tonight. I'm looking forward to your questions, and I thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, now for Q&A. We'll start off with just a kind of a global question around your interest around being a Democrat, your decision to be a Democrat. And I'm going to pose this question while volunteers are collecting index cards for the other questions that will be posed to you during this program. At some point in your life, you had to make this decision to become a Democrat. We want to know tell us something about what propelled you, what motivated you to make that decision to be a Democrat. And we start with Sean Garb Lee.
Great question. Thank you so much. I think I was always a Democrat. I think I was born a Democrat. The truth is I was adopted right from birth. I never knew my birth mother, never knew my birth father, and I faced tremendous challenges growing up, as we all have. And I learned from those experiences that it is important to give back. And it's important to set policy to protect the most vulnerable in our community, whether it's the kid in foster care, the family that's almost homeless or about to be homeless, the child with disabilities, the firefighter who runs into a burning building and risks his life and develops Parkinson's or cancer. I have always believed that the Democratic Party stands for the most vulnerable and protecting what we hold dear. I also value the importance of building a strong education system for every child, no matter what zip code he or she was born into, or making sure that we have a strong infrastructure, both transportation and water, and making sure that we leave a better earth to the next generation than what we've inherited today. That's the role of government. The role of government is a force for good. And the Democratic Party, in my opinion, why I'm so proud to be a Democrat, stands for fighting for the most vulnerable. And that's really what I've tried to do the past 9 years as a legislator. It's been to stand up to powerful interests, to build coalitions in the legislature and advocacy groups outside the legislature, and get things done. And I'm so proud to be a Democrat, and I'll continue to be a Democrat until the day I die. Thanks so much.
Cindy?
Am I next?
Yep.
Well, so to be perfectly honest, my father was a Republican, so when I was 15, I had to be a Democrat. Now, I love my father, and he's since come over from the dark side, but I think I was attracted to, as a youngster, I was certainly attracted to the open tent of the Democratic Party. the marches in Washington that we did for the Vietnam War, the first Earth Day that I participated in, the Women's March in the early 70s. Those are all democratic causes. And I really believed that the Democrats represented the values that I held in fairness and equality and support for working people. But I think as we move on, we have to be really careful, and we have to ensure that our party continues to really focus on the core values of protecting those without a voice. And that's why, for me, it is so important and amazing and wonderful and gratifying to see people who have never been engaged come out and get active. Because we, the Democrats, the Republicans, we all can become complacent. We all can just say, oh, we're against this, so you're for that. You're for that, so we're against this. We need to have new voices and new people coming in and engaging us and giving us the energy to keep fighting for the issues that people in this Commonwealth, really regardless of whether they're Republican or Democrat, care about. Fairness, housing, jobs, security. That's what we all ought to be fighting for. And as long as the Democratic Party is for that, I am for the Democratic Party. Thank you.
So my parents were Democrats, and they were very active in the civil rights era of the 60s, and very social, liberal, and they kind of they weren't always out in the community in terms of marches. We lived in a small town in the mountains in Pennsylvania when this was going on, and they were helping out people who needed help, people who were hungry, and people who were from other communities, other states, other countries who had come into our community, and they were helping them out. So I learned that I didn't have to wait. If I had an idea to do something, I could find some people who were willing to support it with me, and then I could run with it. And I think probably one of the most telling things from my high school years was I was not even I guess I was just coming into high school, and George McGovern was running for president that year, and we had just moved to Massachusetts, and I decided I was going to work on that campaign. And of course, that was the year that Massachusetts was the only state that voted for George McGovern, and we all thought that he was going to win. Yeah. So I know that now the party is really searching, but we know who we are. We're very strong in our values. We know that we're, bringing new people along with us, and we're trying to understand where everybody's coming from. So I believe in the Democratic Party. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. All right, questions are starting to come in, and we're trying to see if we can combine them because we got a lot of questions on the same topic as we expected. The first has to do with climate change. We received many questions on this, and what we've done is we have taken the liberty of putting them together. So bear with me. The issue, one audience member states, the issue that affects all of us and all future generations is this issue of climate change. It is a threat to our environment, it is a threat to the climate. And since the entire world has, quote, rejected President Trump's offer to renegotiate the Paris Climate Change Accord, it has been said that it will be up to businesses in the states to pursue meaningful climate control measures. So here's the question. As state senator, what will you do to promote climate control in Massachusetts? And then we are starting with you, Sean.
Great. Thank you, Charlotte. This is the moral obligation that we have around addressing climate change. And what President Trump and his administration did the other day was a moral catastrophe. And we have the obligation and the commitment to address it seriously in Massachusetts. Each state needs to address climate change seriously. That's why I'm so proud that I am the lead sponsor of the 100% renewable energy bill by 2050, 2035 in utilities, and 2050 in all sectors by then. I have built coalitions with members of the House and the Senate. We have over 50 co-sponsors. We have cities and towns from across the Commonwealth, all 351 cities and towns that are on board. But we need to do more than just to get to 100% renewable energy. We have to fund the DEP. We have to fund DCR because they've had devastating cuts since 2008, since the recession. We need to pass the carbon pricing bill. We need to put a fee on carbon. It is just so important. But that 100% renewable energy, that's where we need to go because Massachusetts needs to play a leadership role. And this legislation will set a roadmap on how to get there. Thank you so much.
So it's interesting what happens and how you think you're moving along and you think you're making some good strides, and then all of a sudden the world just turns like that. And that's kind of what happens in the area of energy. We are now facing a huge budget slashing of the EPA at the federal level. We're going to roll back all of our regulations. And so the state becomes, as Sean said, it's important. The state becomes the protector of the environment. I think there's a couple things that we can do and should do. We need to continue to be part of the Regional Greenhouse Initiative with all of the states around us because we can't solve this problem alone. We don't live on an island or our own planet. So we have to build that alliance, and we have to force the governor to do that. And I'd had a lot of really specific things to say about the governor, but he did come out yesterday and agree to be part of the Climate Alliance. So we need to give him credit for that, because that's important. But we also need to hold him to his promise of 1% of the budget going to the environment, which he has not met that. We need to look at our renewable energy standard package, which says how much the utilities have to put towards renewable energies. And right now, they have to do 1% a year. If we did 2% a year or 2.5% a year, we would get to a clean energy state even faster, which is what we need to do now. And I think we also, the last thing we need to look at for our district is regional planning. Because if you look at what's happening on Cambridge and you look at what's happening on our borders, we are being, our Mugar land and Alewife are being, their problems are being exacerbated because of all of the building that's going on outside our borders. So we need a regional plan to protect Arlington.
So I think we must invest in clean energy as our government invests in our future. Implementing tax breaks to small businesses and energy providers is a must in order to prevent the dangers of climate change and reduce our dependency on foreign oil. And in 2008, we had the very good foresight to establish the Global Warming Solutions Act, which seemed like a great goal to reduce by 25% greenhouse gases by 2020. And that's 2.5 years away, and we're off the benchmark for that goal. And I think that one of our priorities is to set a carbon price, whether it's a fee or a dividend. It's important that we provide an indication that that's where the price is going to be, because it gets us running on clean energy and also will be an indicator to the market that it's time to invest in renewables. But more than that, I think this is a place for technological and innovative partnerships, because the economic interest in the research will help us develop for long-term electricity storage, so that we can store and use later that electricity that we're making in solar and wind power. We need to move reasonable green energy policy forward for our economy and for our public health.
Thank you, candidates. Our next question is on criminal justice reform, and we received many questions on this topic. And what I'm going to ask you to do is to just give us a yes or no answer. So I'm going to bop through the several questions that we received. You just tell us yes or no, and then we'll loop back, starting with Sean, where you can expand on your view on criminal justice reform. Sound good? Okay, so the first question that I'm going to pose to you is this. Each of you Are you committed to voting in favor of ending mandatory minimum sentences for drug offenses? Are you committed to voting in favor of ending mandatory minimum sentences for drug offenses? And let's start, Sean, just yes or no?
Yes.
Cindy?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we got yeses on that. So let's talk about this issue around these drug offenses. Let me bop through the next one. Are you committed to voting to shorten the time allowed for solitary confinement to no more than 15 days per infraction? Okay, I'll repeat. Are you committed to voting to shorten the time allowed for solitary confinement to no more than 15 days per infraction?
0 days, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Marianne?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And then the last question is simply asked, will you drive Senator Donnelly's legislation to reform pretrial bail?
Yes.
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 Okay, so we got yeses from everybody. There's a unanimous view on these issues. So now let's hear some more. Let's let them expand on where they are in criminal justice reform, taking into account that you have audience members who are particularly interested in these issues. And we'll start with Sean.
Thank you very much, Charlotte. Today, the Joint Committee on Judiciary heard a number of legislation around criminal justice reform. And I testified along with several of my colleagues who serve in the Drug Law Reform Caucus. And we were able to offer testimony for our strong support for minimum mandatory sentencing reform, pretrial bail reform, solitary confinement reform, my legislation around creating restorative justice opportunities in all 351 cities and towns, and around fine time for fees and compassionate early release, which is another piece of legislation that I filed. The most important thing is that this is our opportunity to pass substantial progressive criminal justice reform. The caking on of minimum mandatory sentencing and the harm that it's done to especially communities of color, and that's the truth. It has had a devastating impact on our streets across the Commonwealth, and it has not made us safer. And my commitment to you is that if elected to the Senate, I will not be voting for a reform that doesn't include all of these things, because we have one opportunity to get this right. I've been in the legislature for 9 years, and these important topics don't come up all the time, even though we're continually talking among legislators in the House and the Senate on how to advance many of these important things. This is our chance, and we need to pass it, and I can't wait to vote for it.
So this has been something in the Senate that I have been intimately involved in for the past several years. I actually wrote with our general counsel the bail reform bill, and that's moving through the Senate. Moving through the hearings right now. everybody agrees, I think, up here with criminal justice reform. I want to point one part of this out, and that is the intersection of mental illness and criminal justice. We spend $56,000 a year incarcerating people. 25% of those people, conservatively, are people who suffer with a mental illness. If you add substance use disorder to that, half of those people have a mental illness. So we are incarcerating people who are sick. If you don't think that's morally reprehensible, for $56,000, you can offer a hell of a lot of service to people, and you can keep them in the community, and you can treat them humanely, and you can help them be productive, and you can help them be part of their communities. We must do this if we really want to address criminal justice, if we really want to be on the side of morality, and if we really want to be economically sensible. We have got to start treating people who are mentally ill, not criminalizing them, but treating them. And I have worked on this issue for the past 5 or 6 years. We've made some wonderful progress working with police and the trial courts and even some of our sheriffs, but we need to continue. And I think this is one of the biggest issues in criminal justice that faces us, and I am absolutely committed to working on this issue.
Thank you.
Well, I'm thrilled that this is an issue that is moving currently in the State House. Restorative justice is such an important tool, and it saves lives, it changes lives. I was interested, and maybe you all saw it too, the Mass Inc. poll recently that was released that showed that a majority of people across the state are in support of criminal justice reform, so that instead of mandatory minimums, we're using education and trainings so that folks who are in these situations, incarcerated under small offenses, can actually be trained and come out into the community. And I think that's very important. I was also encouraged to hear that the governor and the speaker and the president, Senate president, were working together on some focused areas regarding from a report that came down from the Council of State Governments. So it's great to see a holistic approach happening from within the legislature and the governor's office, and I think we're going to be continuing this issue. It's something that we're very thoughtful about, and I'm really pleased to see that it's moving.
Thank you. Questions continue to come in, and we've received 6 questions concerning vulnerable populations. So I would like to, we've conflated these, and we have one question which I think captures the sentiment of these other 6 questions. And this time we're going to start with Cindy. And the question is, how do you see yourself fighting for the most vulnerable and at-risk members of our community? Cindy, Marianne, Sean.
That's a really interesting question. I think that I have done this in several areas. The first one is what I referred to earlier, and that is people who suffer from severe and persistent mental illness, who are vulnerable because they get no treatment. They are often homeless. They're often in our emergency rooms and in our jail cells. And I have written and lobbied for several bills that actually targets those people with treatment that is patient-centered rather than insurance-centered, and it works. We can show you a number of pilots that have been successful that we have sponsored. The other area is in homelessness and how we treat people and families who are homeless. About 3 or 4 years ago, the administration decided that the way to address the overcrowding of shelters and hotels was to limit, not to find homes, permanent homes for these people, but to limit who could actually get there. So instead of you receiving immediate shelter if you were a family because you were fleeing from domestic violence, the new regulation said, you know what, you have to be living with your with the perpetrator in order to get shelter. Instead of it being an eligibility if you were living for something in a place unfit for habitation, for human habitation, you had to be out on the streets and living in a bus shelter. And that way we wouldn't have so many people who were coming into our shelters. Well, we fought for about 3 months with the administration to change those regulations back to ensure that children and their families had access to emergency shelter. So what you have to do is you got to get down and dirty, and you have to fight with the people who are trying to change these regulations.
Thank you.
And
If that's okay.
and keep doing it and doing it and doing it.
Thank you. Marianne?
So I guess my understanding of vulnerable populations has shifted a bit since Trump came in January, and so that understanding of what I had previously considered vulnerable populations has just the circle has enlarged, so that now we're talking about marginalized folks who are LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender folks, questioning people about their sexuality, as well as race and ethnic and religious minorities who are completely marginalized as a result of some of the outrageous acts happening out of Washington of late. And I was really proud to be part of the leadership team for Progressive Democrats of Massachusetts, because shortly after the election, we were connecting with all of, I think I walked around in a coma for a few days, but after that, we started connecting and having conversations about what people were, what they were feeling and what was happening. And by and large, this issue of protecting marginalized ethnic and religious minority groups was an area that was just exploding for how we were going to respond. And this was from kids in colleges, from other countries. People were coming together in communities to really try and lend support, try and figure out how we would support this. So we actually had conversations in many districts, many communities, and then had an issue conference where we took this on with people from Maura Healey's office and the ACLU and the Massachusetts Immigration Refugee Advocacy Coalition, MIRA, and really brought our heads together for the first time to really talk about this. And that conversation needs to keep happening.
Thank you.
Thank you. If you talk to any health insurance lobbyist, they will give you a list of representatives that they dislike the most. And I know I went from number 3 to number 1 a few years ago because of all the pieces of legislation that I filed. So whether or not it was standing up to the health insurance companies to fund hearing aids for children, to fund protein disorders for children, to fund medication for those living with MS, I have been proud to fight the insurance companies. I will continue to do that. I'm also proud if the Republicans try to defund the Children's Health Insurance Program. I have legislation to make sure that 160,000 of the most vulnerable kids in Massachusetts don't lose it. That's incredibly important. I have worked and led the effort around kids with disabilities, funding Turning 22, funding employment programs, funding autism coverage, and working on reforming DCF, so incredibly important. My amendment around the Massachusetts Rental Voucher Program passed a couple of years ago, which increased funding for MRVP, millions of dollars in increase that led to more vouchers being available for families to avoid homelessness, but to get stabilized housing, something that's just so important. And I was also proud to be on the steering committee that pushed for the transgender equal rights bill and to push it through to make sure that we protect our transgendered brothers and sisters across the Commonwealth. And I'm also one of the lead sponsors of the Safe Communities Act, because we need to protect immigrants who deserve it. And one thing that I think is just so critically important is I have worked so hard to protect and fight for the most vulnerable populations for the past 9 years. And I will stay on that number one enemy of the health insurance companies if you elect me to the state Senate, and I will continue to fight for them. Thank you.
Thank you. Four audience members turned in questions on education. So we're going to go in the order of Marianne, Sean, and then Cindy. And the question reads like this. What specific reforms would you make to charter school funding and to governance? Charter school funding and governance. Marianne?
Sure. So I'm currently on the Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, which, as you know, I'm one of 11 members that makes the decision about charter schools, Commonwealth charter schools all across the state. I think in terms of governance, we need to turn that over to locally elected school committee members and also to increase the transparency of all the financial aspects like our core public schools have to do. Right now, the only thing that is public about charter schools, frankly, is the funding, which comes from public taxpayers. And we really need to adjust the charter school law so that it is in step with the way things are being run today. 25 years ago is a different story, and now it's a wedge, a major wedge that drives privatization and corporate control of public education. And we know, thinking about that picture happening in the national background there's, we don't know yet what's actually going to come, but we know that we need to be prepared for some of that. And so governance, that's one thing. And funding-wise, we need to, because of the challenges with charter schools and our core public schools, it's really creating a kind of a crisis in many districts because the foundation budget isn't up to the level it needs to be all across the state. So those special in those districts and gateway communities and in rural communities. So the charter school piece was picked up a couple of sessions ago. And the legislature took it up again last session. I don't know when the legislature will feel the urgency to take it up again, but it's something that I'm committed to, and I look forward to bringing that forward in the legislature.
It is incredibly important to close the achievement gap in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We can all agree on that. And my heart sinks when I talk with parents in Boston who feel that the only chance their kids are going to have to get ahead and get an education is sending them to a charter school. I've been involved in the debate over the last decade on closing that achievement gap. And the only thing that we have debated, whether or not to close the achievement gap, is through raising the cap on charter schools. That's not the way to close the achievement gap. The way to close the achievement gap is by addressing poverty. That's the way we do it. It's about workforce training. It's about public higher education access for parents. It's about increasing the minimum wage to $15 an hour. It's about allowing people to get ahead. But that's the only thing we've discussed, is to raise the cap on charter schools. And the reason we can't do that is because it directly takes the funding from Chapter 70, the funding that's used to educate public schools. What we need to do, and what I'm so proud about, was I was one of the original sponsors of the Foundation Budget Review Commission that said that we are underfunding public education $500 million every year, especially in the areas of health insurance, especially in the areas of special education. We need to fund education. That's why I'm so supportive of the fully implementing the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission and passing the Fair Share Amendment, which I voted on last term to raise $2 billion in revenue for education and transportation. But we need to get the funding formula for charter schools right. I voted against both bills. I think I was one of 7 Democrats that voted no, because it's the wrong message to send, and it's wrong to do that to our public school teachers who work so hard with the lack of resources to do the job. We need to give them the resources. Thank you.
I think it's interesting. I mean, certainly as a public school teacher, an elementary school teacher for 6 years, I know what it's like to be in a classroom, and I know what the issues that teachers face are. We've been back and forth on the charter school piece, and what I have come to realize is we're comparing apples and oranges. If we really want to understand whether charter schools work or don't work, all we need to do is level the playing field. We need to have charter schools run by the same exact rules and regulations as our public schools do. Okay? They got to take everybody who comes. They can't kick somebody out because their parent couldn't show up for a parent-teacher conference. They are transparent about their funding. They have to deal with the issues of testing and teachers' service the same way that our public schools have to. So we're not comparing apples and oranges. We're comparing public schools with private schools, because that's fundamentally what a charter school is, except we pay for it. So we need to go back to the actual statute, which says we are going to create a set of charter schools as laboratories to inform public education and best practices. And until we actually do that, and we have an absolute playing field that's level, where everybody's playing for this, by the same rules, then maybe we can have a conversation. But until then, we cannot lift the cap on charter schools. Public education needs to be public.
Thank you. We have time for a couple more questions. Let's look at transportation. We only received one question on transportation, but we'll pose this question to you anyway. It says, how will you help to improve MBTA service in the district to ensure that reliable services are provided to residents? And this one, we're going to start with Sean.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. I think this is a setup question because I chair the MBTA caucus in the legislature, along with my friend Jamie Eldridge in the Senate. I led the effort to stop any cuts to the MBTA service, whether it be our buses out of Alewife, the commuter rail, making sure we lowered the cost of the ride for our most vulnerable, making sure we still had the commuter rail on the weekends. But the real reason our transportation problem is so profound is because politicians on Beacon Hill have continued to kick the can down the road and have not addressed what the real issue is. And the real issue is the $5.3 billion debt that politicians saddled on the big dig. And the reason why that's so important is that on every dollar that comes in to the MBTA, 35 cents of that right up the top goes to debt service. You couldn't run a business like that. You couldn't run the Arlington Public Schools like that. It's not possible. So because of that, we can't invest in infrastructure. We can't invest in new designs. We have a hard time extending things like the Green Line or the North-South Rail Link unless we have federal funding. That's why I have filed legislation to take the debt off the MBTA and develop a plan to pay it down. That's the only way we're going to figure out our way out of this mess, as well as properly funding it. The MBTA is poorly funded to begin with through sales tax revenue, and an assessment to 175 communities that are defined to be in the MBTA region. But that's the only way we're really going to have a 21st century transportation system. Thank you.
So I think that we've been looking at transportation in a way that is not allowing us to move it forward. First of all, it's not just the debt, but it's the incredible mismanagement of that system over the last 30 or 40 years. It's not a worker issue, it's a management issue. But having said that, we haven't been able to make the case that transportation is the fundamental driver of so many of our issues. It matters about the environment, it's education, it's housing, it's getting to your jobs. If we don't have a transportation system that serves not only out districts, but around our city, we are not going to be able to sustain the economic development that we have today. Our 4th Middlesex is feeling incredible pressure around housing and enrollment and land prices because you've got to live in the economic hub. And we don't have a transportation system that allows people to live out in Springfield and get to the jobs in Lexington. You can't even get from Woburn to Waltham. You can't get from the Fenway over to Dorchester. And if you're making $7 an hour, you can't live in Boston. So unless we actually become very serious about transportation and see it as an overall driver for everybody in the Commonwealth, including those people that don't live around the MBTA, we're not going to solve the problem. So we have got to engage with all of the people in this state to understand the incredible value of having a transportation system that works for everybody. And until we do that, we're going to be in this vicious cycle of paying for more and getting less. And that's what's happening. We're not making a stride in this direction.
Thank you. So our Commonwealth continues to make up for the decisions made. We continue to struggle with the decisions that were made in between 1998 and 2002, which resulted in a loss of $3 billion in revenue every year. And I'm proud of the key role that I'm playing to bring the Fair Share Amendment to voters in November 2018. And as one of the first signers of the petition that was presented to Attorney General Maura Healey, this tax on folks making over $1 million will be dedicated to public transportation and infrastructure and public education. It will be split. But this will be over, year over year, and we'll be able to address this problem going forward. I think this is an example of the way that the issues are in front of us for many, many years. Even if we get $2 billion with the fair share tax, and it will be split between public ed and public transportation, we're going to have to figure out, get a plan together for how we're going to address our need for transportation for all. And it's not enough to say that we need a system that's affordable and accessible and environmentally responsible. Our public transportation system was begun in the 1800s. And so it's reached a state of disrepair, and systems have failed, and then they continue to fail. And we need new modern system that is run on clean energy and is affordable, and the sooner the better.
Thank you. We have two more questions that I'm going to pose to you, and then we're going to go to our final statements because time is winding down here. On the healthcare, I'm just going to ask for a yes or no question. And this one we've heard from lots of people who care about healthcare and care about specifically single-payer healthcare. And so yes or no, starting with Cindy. And the question is, do you see universal single-payer healthcare as a solution to our healthcare issues? Yes or no, Cindy?
Yes.
Okay,
with some
Mary Ann?
caveats.
Yes.
Sean?
Yes.
Okay, to be continued, right? We'll hear more about that later on, right? In the campaign. On the arts, I'm going to allow you a little more time on this, and we're going to start with Mary Ann, Cindy, and Sean. On the arts, the state, and this is a detailed question provided from an audience member, I read it. The State House's proposed budget lowers the Massachusetts Cultural Council's budget to $12 million. The State Senate's budget proposed raising the council's annual budget to $16.2 million. Assuming these two numbers are right, the audience member wants to know, when the two budgets are reconciled, will you commit to stand firm with the Senate's decision? Remember, the Senate's decision is on the raising it to the $16.2 million. Will you stand firm with the Senate's decision, raise the Massachusetts Cultural Council's budget to $16.2 million, $16.2 million as proposed? This one, on the arts, I'd like us to start with Mary Ann, then Cindy, then Sean.
Yes, I would support that. And we have far fewer arts programs, not only in our schools, but all across our communities and all across the Commonwealth and the arts culture than when I was in school, though those many years ago. And we're all paying the price. The arts matter, and these modes of thought matter, not only for our children, but for our communities and for our Commonwealth and for our economy. We have to bring a whole lot more imagination, a whole lot more of creativity to help solve the problems that are before us in pretty much every area in front of us. And this is something that I can bring with my experience and my background in the arts for very many years. And so, yeah, this is something that I'm deeply committed to.
Well, we have reached the end of this program in terms of the question and answer.
No.
Oops, pardon.
Did you want?
We didn't.
Go ahead.
So who goes next? I wasn't sure.
Oh, you lost track. Okay, I lost track. I got pulled offside. Okay, I thought you had this party going. Sorry,
Yes,
pardon me, everybody. We heard from Mary Ann, next is Cindy, then Sean.
I absolutely support the Senate budget. I think I was certainly something that we advocated to raise the contribution from the state. But I will tell you what will be the most effective way of making sure that that happens. If there are 6 people that are on a conference committee, and they go into a room and they pull down the shades and they lock the doors and they put little pieces of food underneath and they don't let them out until they've come up with some decision. And they won't talk to very many people, but what they will talk to is their constituents. So if constituents are calling them, if the people who vote for them are calling them and telling them that they want to keep that 16.25, I thought it was 16.5, in the budget, that is the best way to ensure that that money stays there. So we got to be active, and we got to make our voices heard, and they have to hear from you. And I guarantee you, if they hear from you, they hear from us, then we have a much better chance of succeeding.
Thank you.
Cindy described the conference committee where they lock the doors and they don't let anybody in unless they have food. Well, I'll be the one bringing the food because I strongly value the Massachusetts Cultural Council. You know, I've been in the State House for 9 years now. Every budget, we have 100+ people as legislators, as co-sponsors to increase the amount of the Massachusetts Cultural Council. And it always seems that the programs that are so vital to our community, whether it be the Massachusetts, whether it be the Massachusetts Cultural Council or libraries, we're underfunded. And we're talking a $40 billion budget, and we don't do enough to fund the programs that are so important. So yes, I've been a strong advocate for MCC. I will continue to be a strong advocate for it. The House did add $2 million more based on our original, but it was far too short. And we need to keep the Senate number. And I look forward to actively, aggressively pushing the 3 members of the House and 3 members of the Senate on the conference committee to get that full number for MCC. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, candidates, on that. I was pulled out by the organizers because there are just so many questions, and people would love to be able to stay here longer to talk about voting, to talk about how to expand the number of Democrats and to attract independents as well, and liberal-leaning Republicans, but we don't have time for that, so maybe you'll be able to follow up with your constituents or prospective constituents separately. But let's end here to give them the final say in terms of the speaking program and allow them final remarks. And these are 2 minutes apiece, starting with Sean, then Marianne, then Cindy. And, tell us what you want us to know that you didn't get a chance to speak to. What didn't we hear about your views? What don't we know about you? They're complicated issues, but let us hear from you now. Sean?
Thank you, Charlotte. Charlotte, thanks so much for hosting or moderating this event. Thank you to the Arlington and Lexington Democratic Town Committees for hosting this. We have a tremendous group of people running for the state senate. Both would be outstanding state senators. I am running for the state senate because I want to be your voice again on Beacon Hill. I have been proud of the coalitions I've built, the work I've done on so many issues that are facing the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and I want to run for the Senate to be your voice and to have a larger platform to be able to get more things done. This is an important choice, and I think it's a profound one. I am hoping to be in the Senate for a long time, and I can hit the ground running because of my 9 years of experience as a member of the House. I am the candidate with the direct legislative experience, and I want to continue Senator Donnelly's legacy, and I want to build on it. And I know I'll be able to do it, and I ask you for your vote on June 27th. Thanks so much.
Thank you to everybody involved in organizing tonight, and thank you again for coming out and engaging in this process. I'm running for state senator because I'm fighting for a system that's accountable and accessible to our people, that responds to the needs of all and our collective vision of a future of shared prosperity. Government is about the choices we make together. We need leaders in state government who understand this and the challenges facing modern families and communities. As a community advocate at the local, state, and national level for the last 20 years, I've been speaking up on the issues that matter most to families: the economy, tax reform, public education. I've been leading with both passion and respect for the voices, issues, and concerns of my fellow and sister residents across the Commonwealth. I can't say enough about good Ken Donnelly. He loved the people he served. He had so many great ideas, wonderful ideas, and I believed in so many of them, like improved services for veterans, support for hardworking families, and speaking up for organized labor. And as we look at the national picture, I have to ask, are we prepared for the possible repeal of the Affordable Care Act? Are we prepared for the possible repeal of Roe v. Wade? Are we prepared to respond to the reckless proposals from an utterly unqualified federal Secretary of Education and for no support whatsoever from Washington on climate change? We must prepare to protect from these outrageous and mean proposals, and that means more imagination and a different perspective. Ken Donnelly was one of a kind, and yes, he left behind big shoes to fill, but I'm bringing my own. And he had great ideas, and I will build on them, but I'm not Ken. I'm Marianne, and I have my own ideas, and I'm listening to the people of the 4th about their ideas too. I ask for your vote on Tuesday, June 27th. Thank you.
State government has never been more important. As Washington rolls back protections on the environment, our rights, and the most vulnerable among us, we must hold the line at the state level. We must be the voice of those who cannot stand up to the power of big money. We must become the innovative problem solvers. The 4th Middlesex wants such a person, and you deserve someone who will be a loud and persistent advocate, who will fight for our shared values, who will bring experience and passion, who can work with all different stakeholders, and who has the ability to get things done. I believe I'm that person. I am very lucky because one of the wonderful things about Ken Donnelly was that he allowed me to partner with him. And together, we brought a portfolio of issues that we both care deeply about. I too have legislative experience. I too have written bills. I have worked with advocates. I've worked with my colleagues. I've worked with the senators, and I know that I can continue to do that. I care passionately about the issues that we worked on together. I am a problem solver, not a politician. I will work with colleagues, residents, and advocates to address issues like affordable health care, transportation, education, wage inequality, environment, and criminal justice, so that our communities thrive and all our residents have a voice and equal access to the tools and skills needed to be economically stable and secure in today's world. I did that as the Senator's Chief of Staff, and I will continue to do it. I also bring the drive to fight for the people of the 4th Middlesex and what matters to you. I have seen the fierce advocates that live in this district and the generosity of the people. You have the skills and the determination to make a difference. I hope you will send me to the Senate so we can work together. Thank you.
Let's put our hands together for these 3 dynamic candidates for the 4th Middlesex State Senate seat. Cindy Friedman, Sean Garb Lee, and Marianne Stewart. Thank you, candidates. Thank you, candidates. Now bear with me just for a sec before you pack up and leave, because we just need to close down this program. So please have a seat just one moment. I just want to thank you all for your courage to run for office, to express your views publicly here this evening on a variety of complicated issues, and to engage with us. So thank you and good luck. Now in closing, before we leave, just a couple of announcements and thanks. First, please remember to tell your neighbors, your friends, your family members that there's a special election of the 4th Middlesex Senate seat, and the last day to register to vote is June 7th. That's this Wednesday. If you can't vote in person, be sure to request an absentee ballot from your town clerk's office. Election day is June 27th. I want to thank groups of individuals who helped make tonight a success. First and foremost, the candidates themselves. Cindy Friedman, Sean Garb Lee, Marianne Stewart. Thank you for your commitment to public service, your values of our Democratic Party that were on display tonight. The audience, thank yourselves. Arlington Town Hall, here. You've been terrific with your questions, your insight, and you were on point. Also, our viewing audience at home, thanks for tuning in. Our hosts, the Arlington and Lexington Democratic Town Committees who organized this important forum, thank you. And to the volunteers, including our question sorters and our timekeepers, thank you all. And the Arlington Town Hall and Town of Arlington for a terrific venue. I also want to acknowledge that we have elected officials in the House, Democratic Town Committee members, and Democratic State Committee members who joined us tonight. And we are really pleased that you would take time out of your busy schedule. I ask you all to stand if you would. And our media outlets, which have helped to educate the electorate tonight. Specific thanks to ACMI's Executive Director, Norm McLeod, Studio Manager, Jeff Monroe, Government Access Coordinator, Sean Keene, and staff and volunteers at ACMI. Then also at Lex Media, we want to acknowledge News Director Heather Evison. And then for those of you who are able to watch this program again as it repeats, remember Comcast Channel 8, RCN Channel 15, Verizon Channel 26, and the program is on demand for ACMI and Lex Media going forward. And check your local channel listings. Also, Executive Director Florence Del Santo for Lex Media, News Director Heather Avison from ACMI. Thank you. You have my personal, sincere appreciation for allowing me to be part of this important evening. And on behalf of Arlington and Lexington Democratic Town Committees, thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you.